Chapter 9, Behavior Misconduct, Part 2. When we try to explain police behavior, we have to consider at a very broad level what actually influences police behavior is in terms of the individual police officer. What shapes that individual police officer's behaviors? Is it nurture or nature? And so in the terms from your textbook, that's really socialization versus predisposition. So does working as a police officer change the police officer and change their behaviors? So that would be nurture and socialization. Or is it predisposition? That police officers basically come into policing pretty much already formed. And they're not going to change that much over their career. They're going to change some. Everybody does when they age, when they gain more experience. But they're not going to look that much different at the end of their career than they really did at the beginning of their career. We might think that they've really changed a lot, but in truth, their values and attitudes haven't changed that much. So this would be more nature. In terms of socialization, so again we have it stated here, is police behavior better explained by socialization or predisposition? Socialization theory says that the process actually shapes the officers. So officers are grown. They're not born that way. So the officers throughout their career, they go through various stages in their career, and these stages shape them. So pre-entry choice. Certainly they're going to come into policing with some values and with some attitudes. And so that process of becoming a police officer, of identifying with police, of selecting policing as a career, that may be shaped by how police are presented to the world. So how do we view the police? What do we know about the police? Even if it is just a lay person's knowledge of the police, it's probably shaped through media, through television, through movies, maybe interactions with the police. And so these kinds of things, this kind of socialization can determine whether you want to become a police officer or not. What do you think about the job? So for instance, I knew the FBI recruiter from Pittsburgh, and he would go to job fairs and women would walk by him because they would say, I can't, and he would come out and ask them, why don't you want to be an FBI agent? And they said, I don't want to get shot. And so their belief about policing, especially FBI, was everybody got shot. And so he had to point out to him that he didn't become an FBI agent because he wanted to get shot. Most people don't go into a profession because they want to be shot. And so he said, that's not what we do. But nonetheless, that was shaped by it, that somehow women more than men were discouraged by the fact that there was some potential danger. So that's going to shape who becomes a police officer, and it's going to, shape, for instance, if you have to have a clean criminal record, that you have to have respect for rules and authority. That's probably going to affect how you manage your own personal life if your goal is to become a police officer. You might not go out drinking with your underage friends because you don't want any kind of arrest on your record. So even pre-entry, you may be shaping yourself through the socialization, through knowing that police officers have to be have a certain kind of background, have a certain kind of morality. Admittance and introduction, you come into the police department, you go into an academy. Most likely that's going to be your introduction to the police department. You're going to be recruited perhaps. You're going to go through the application process we talked about in earlier chapters. So you're going to go through background checks. You're going to go through screenings. You're going to go through testings, all kinds of things. That's going to shape you. Okay, because again, you know what you have to do to become a police officer, so it's going to shape right from the very beginning, at least according to socialization theory, your attitudes, your beliefs, and your behaviors. So you're going to grow as a police officer. Then you're going to enter the profession. So you come out of the academy, you're going to actually become a police officer. These stages will shape how you view the world, how you act, how you behave. You may come into policing really altruistic. You're going to change the world. You're going to make it better. And then you soon realize that policing is perhaps much different than you thought. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you thought you were never going to make a difference, and suddenly you find out you can make an extreme difference as a police officer. So again, you enter the profession, you get, your eyes are open to what the profession is like, and it may be a different view of the profession than what you had believed from those earlier stages. You continue to work as a police officer, so there may be continuance, or may even be metamorphosis. You may really change. You may become a different person. Maybe you were really, you weren't very disciplined when you came into policing. By the time you leave policing, you've got your life in order. You're, someone who's very disciplined, someone who's very orderly. Maybe you came in cynical and you left optimistic, or vice versa. You came in optimistic and you left cynical. Maybe you were an honest person when you first came in, but over the course of your career, you were working in a police department that was largely dishonest. You became dishonest. So again, there is a possibility that you could dramatically change, or maybe it's more likely to be a more gradual evolution. You continue your growth as a person, as a police officer. You continue to change as you grow older. Predisposition theory says that your behaviors are best explained by the characteristics, the values, the attitudes that you brought with you into policing. In other words, you were already formed by the time you came into policing, and if there are any changes, they're more superficial changes. If you came into policing as an honest officer, you're probably going to stay an honest officer, even if you're in a dishonest department. Maybe you'll choose to leave that department and go to another. Maybe you'll try to change the police department. You'll try to reform it. Or if you were a dishonest person, you're going to be a dishonest person as a police officer. If you had, you were very diligent, you were a hard worker, you're going to remain the same. If you were optimistic, you're probably going to still stay optimistic. If you're pessimistic, you're going to remain pessimistic. So predisposition theory says police officers are mostly already what they're going to be when they come into the profession. The actual profession doesn't change them very much. What is the truth? Does socialization theory really explain police behavior or predisposition? It's probably a little bit of both. How much of each? That really depends on your perspective. But no doubt policing does change people over the course of their career. But also there's no doubt that you do come into the profession with certain attitudes and beliefs that are really likely at the core of your being. And it's going to be very difficult for whatever you do on the job to change those core beliefs. Police culture can play, if we believe in socialization theory, it's going to play a key role. And so your book identifies 4 basic principles that shape police culture. One is this idea of coercive territorial control, that officers often view their work in terms of how they control their beat. So how do they control their area? Do they have a very authoritarian view? I'm the law. What I say goes. I own this neighborhood. Do they have that kind of extreme belief? Even if they don't live in the neighborhood, even if they're not part of the neighborhood, they don't look like the people in the neighborhood, they don't share any common values, do they nonetheless view this as, this is my turf, what I say goes? Okay, that's going to have, obviously, if that's the common belief within a police department, we're going to have a much different style of policing than a police department where you view your beat, your turf, as an area where you cooperate with the community. It's the residents' community, and I'm there to serve them. That's a much different view. That's a much different culture than it's my turf, what I say goes. 2 different kinds of views on territorial control. Am I in a partnership, or am I the dictator in this area? Another important facet of police culture is the unknown. What we mean by this is police work is characterized by unpredictability. We don't know. Every day is different. Police officers will tell you this. Every day is different. We never know what we're going to encounter. We're always dealing with the unknown. We never know when this person is going to be respectful or this person is going to challenge us, and maybe even in a violent way they're going to challenge us. So this shapes the police work. We have to be, if you're going to be a good police officer, you're going to have to be fast on your feet. What is the solidarity within a police department? Are they really a close-knit group? Do they view their coworkers as family? I've got your back, you've got mine. Or is it a very loose culture? There's not a great deal of solidarity. There are cliques, there are factions. Maybe the police officers don't even get along. So this kind of police culture, the nature of the solidarity within a culture, is going to shape how the police do their business and what kind of culture we have in the police. So if we have a close-knit, authoritarian culture that's always dealing with unknown, a lot of unknown. There's always new things. This is a big city where anything can happen versus a small town where rarely anything does happen. That's going to produce a different culture than if, depending on those characteristics. A different mentality within the police. So the Chicago Police Department, New York City Police Department, it's probably going to be different in many ways compared to the Bellefonte or the State College Police Department. So again, we can look at some of these factors and try to explain why there are differences in the cultures. Loose coupling is the last of the 4 principles identified by your book. What this refers to, do the police view the strategies and tactics, actually I should say, do they view the departmental goals and policies as hindrances, or do they view them as policies that are there to help them, as goals that are legitimate? How do they couple what they're doing on the streets with the goals and policies of the police department? Is there a loose coupling? Is there a sense that these goals and these policies are counterproductive? They're hindering me in my ability to do my work? Or do they actually accept them and there's a strong coupling? Yes, I believe these are valid, positive things. So again, respect for the department's goals and policies is going to play a large part in determining the police culture. If we had to characterize the police culture generally, again, this may not be true in every police department, but we could say that police generally, the culture is generally conservative, and I don't necessarily mean political conservatism, that they're all Republicans and there are no Democrats who are police officers, because that is absolutely not true. What I mean is police officers tend to they're conservative in the sense that they have respect for authority. They're not rebellious. How are you going to be a police officer if you've led a rebellious youth? It's very unlikely, because you're probably going to have tried things, maybe some drugs, maybe you've broken the law a few times. So if you're going to be a police officer already, you're probably going to have respect for authority. And so you tend to be more conservative, more traditional, more tied to the past, less likely to change. That's what I really mean by conservative. They tend to be collegial. Not every department, but certainly a lot of them view it as, I'm out there putting my life on the line. I need somebody who's going to have my back, and I need to have their back. So we are brothers and sisters. We work together. Again, that isn't true of all departments, but largely, more than many other professions, they really view other police officers as family. Bravery often characterizes the police culture. We are the ones who rush into the hell of bullets while everybody else is running away. That may not be true for all police officers, but again, that's the sense that if you're going to be a police officer, there's a certain element of bravery that you need to have. And if you don't, you're probably not going to make it as a police officer. Most of police work is pretty mundane. It doesn't require much bravery. Okay, but there is always that possibility that something could happen that, yeah, you may need to rush into the line of fire when everybody is ducking for cover. And so bravery certainly helps to set apart police from other professions. That sense that you must be brave to be a police officer. The uniqueness of police work. And so this is often captured in the quote that I have here. Not everyone is cut out to be a cop. It's a calling. It's not just a job. Those kinds of things. Not everybody can make it as a police officer. So it's a unique kind of work. It takes a unique kind of person. And so police often view that as true. We're different. We see things that other people don't see. We have a special insight into morality and the nature of the world. So that can produce positive things, but also can produce an elitist kind of attitude. We're always right. No one else is. And that can translate into this other part, that cops are moral. Cops are wearing the white hats. They're the good folks. And so therefore, they kind of have exclusive knowledge of what's moral, what's not. And so even if I do something that may look like it's improper, don't question me because I'm doing it for the right reasons. Or maybe there is real morality. Police do lead a life of higher standards. That, yes, I'm a police officer. I can't do things that other people can do. I can't go out drinking and driving. I can't steal things. I have to be honest and overly honest in my personal life. So again, morality is part of that police culture, that sense of morality. The code of silence. You don't rat on a fellow cop. Okay? This may be exaggerated. More and more studies are saying, no, police are willing. If there's a culture of integrity in a police department, they are likely to turn in their bad fellow officers. So this notion that you never tell on a fellow police officer, while it may be true in some departments, it may not be as strong as what we've traditionally thought it to be. Male domination. This is a male-dominated profession. We would like to change that. We'd like to see more women in policing, but it's still true that women are a definite minority in policing. In major police departments, the average is usually around, somewhere around 15%, give or take a couple percentage points of how many women there are in a police department. Pennsylvania State Police, for instance, only have 4% of their state troopers are women. So overwhelmingly male-dominated. There is no police department in the United States that has more than 50% women, at least any major police department, large police department. The highest that I've seen is in the 20s, close to 30. But again, most police departments are in the teens, if even that. So this translates into a profession that is still largely male-dominated. If you're a woman and you want to go into policing, you might encounter some of that macho ethic. And so that influences how police do their job, and that culture that you got to be tough. You got to be, don't show emotions. Don't cry. Don't be affected by your work. All these kinds of things. And we'll talk later in the course about how those can certainly have negative impacts. So when we talk about diversity, how it may discourage women from coming into policing. And it also hinders male police officers. If you're never showing your emotions, if you're never dealing with them, you're probably going to be accumulating a lot of stress. So the male-dominated aspect of the culture is something we probably want to change.